Winter in New York always had something special about it, but that day the city felt colder and more distant than ever. The wind cut through the skin like sharp knives, and the streets of Fifth Avenue were nearly empty. Only a few hurried, pedestrians rushing from one side to the other. Amanda Collins walked along the sidewalk, holding her 3-month-old baby in her arms, feeling each icy gust as a relentless reminder that her life had become a constant struggle. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, but still, she had to keep going. The jewelry store on Fifth Avenue stood out for its elegance. Its window displays sparkled with dazzling pieces, diamond rings, pearl necklaces, gold bracelets, and watches only the wealthy could afford. It was a paradise of luxury, and Amanda knew she would never belong in that world. Yet there she was, shoulders hunched from exhaustion, wearing a worn-out stained hoodie, clutching her baby with almost desperate strength. The baby Noah seemed calm for now, but Amanda knew that wouldn't last. Since the day he was born, he had been the center of her world, and he was starting to feel the weight of hunger and cold. Amanda didn't know what she'd do if she couldn't get the money to buy formula that day. The responsibility, the fear, and the shame of being in this situation weighed heavily on her. But there was no other option. Her grandmother's ring was all she had, and with it, she had to ensure her son's survival, whatever it took. When she stepped inside the jewelry store, it felt untouched by the reality outside. The air smelled faintly of roses and polished wood, and the sparkle of the jewels seemed even more intense under the store lights. Everything felt unreachable. Amanda wasn't even sure what she expected by coming in. Maybe help, maybe a kind look, or maybe she was just desperate enough to believe that trading a piece of her past could somehow give her enough to feed her child. As her eyes scanned the store, she noticed the silence that surrounded her. The place was empty, except for an older woman admiring rings in one of the display cases. Lost in thought, Amanda walked slowly to the counter, where a man stood observing the window from side to side. It was William Harper, the store's owner. He watched Amanda approach, noting the tension in her body, the visible weight of struggle on her shoulders. His gaze was intense but not judgmental. He could tell right away there was something different about her. Amanda hesitated for a moment, the pain of her reality catching in her throat. What could she say? How could she begin to explain that she was willing to sell a family heirloom just to buy formula for her baby? The words were hard to form, but she had to try. "Can I help you?" William asked gently, his voice calm and welcoming. He knew most people who walked into the store came for special reasons, and something told him Amanda's case was one of those rare, deeper ones. Amanda took a deep breath and stepped closer to the counter. She kept her eyes fixed on the baby in her arms. She felt that if she looked up again, she'd see the pain of her own failure. Still she spoke, her voice hoarse. I need to sell this ring." She extended her hand with the piece, unable to look him in the eye. I need $20, enough to buy formula for my son." She knelt down in front of William, her hands trembling slightly, and placed the ring on the glass. It was a simple ring, with an emerald at the center that glowed softly, almost as if it held a secret. Amanda looked at it, and for a moment, it felt like she was saying goodbye to something far more valuable than the jewel itself. She was letting go of a piece of her identity, of a past she barely knew, but that had always been part of her grandmother, of her family. William picked up the ring with surprising care, turning it slowly in his fingers to examine it. He noticed something then, the unique glow of the emerald. It wasn't an ordinary stone. There was something more to it, something that evoked the past, something hidden within it. He studied it for a few seconds, his expression shifting slightly as he realized the ring's true value. He had recognized the quality and origin of the piece. It was a historic jewel, far more valuable than he could have guessed when Amanda walked in. And he knew, even though this was part of his job, something in him told him he couldn't treat this like any regular transaction. William looked at Amanda again, more attentively now, more present. He felt an instant connection, a kind of empathy that went beyond business. He saw her struggle, the fear in her eyes. This wasn't just about money. It was about life, about a mother's choices made in the name of love. "I need a moment to take a closer look," William said gently, trying to ease the heavy silence. "Please, have a seat. I'll take care of this for you." Amanda hesitated, then accepted. She sat down in one of the nearby chairs, feeling the weight of her thoughts as she glanced at her son. The baby was still calm, but she knew he was growing restless. What would she do if she couldn't sell the ring? She didn't want to think about it, but the anxiety wouldn't leave her. As William examined the ring more closely, time seemed to slow down for Amanda. The sounds of the store faded, like everything was wrapped in a kind of quiet anticipation. The jeweler's movements, the soft clink of the ring, it all brought a strange sense of stillness. Amanda closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the cool breeze from the store's air conditioning, the softness of the chair beneath her, the fleeting comfort of being somewhere safe, even if only for a moment. "I have an offer for you," William said, breaking the silence. He approached her, his voice calm but carrying a sincerity that surprised her. "This ring, it's worth much more than you think. I want to buy it from you for a lot more than you expected, and I'd like to offer you something else." Amanda looked at him startled. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't know how to react. She could feel that this was far beyond what she had imagined, but she had no idea where it would lead. She had no expectations. William's offer left her speechless. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was something deeper, something she couldn't yet understand. Kneeling there with Noah still in her arms, the weight of responsibility and fear still heavy inside her, she realized that her grandmother's ring, what she once thought was just a trinket, was something far more valuable. William placed the ring carefully aside, as though he had touched something sacred. The way he looked at it was different. He didn't just see its material value, but the story it carried. Amanda sensed that he knew more than he was letting on. His eyes stayed on the ring, but his thoughts seemed to drift through time, as if he were contemplating its meaning. Amanda didn't understand, but she could feel that something important was unfolding. Finally, William looked up and met her gaze. His expression was serious but gentle. He didn't seem like someone who merely bought and sold things. There was something in the way he looked at her and at the ring that filled the room with a silent tension. "You're holding something far more valuable than you realize," he said, his voice steady and calm, but filled with an emotion Amanda hadn't expected. He gave her a faint smile, not one of mockery, but of deep respect. "This ring, it's not just any piece of jewelry. It's part of a historic collection, something that was created for a very important family in Europe. I don't think you have any idea what it really means." Amanda looked at him confused. She didn't know what he was trying to say. Her mind tried to process it, but the words seemed to float away from her. She looked at the ring, now resting safely in his hands, and tried to see something more than a simple emerald and gold setting. But all she could see was an object, one she needed to trade for money. Nothing more. William continued, his tone even softer now. "This ring was made by a very renowned jeweler in 1923. The emerald is extremely rare, and the design is one of a kind. You can't find something like this in just any store. You're holding something of immense value, material and historical. I'm talking about something far beyond money." Amanda felt even more lost. What was he trying to say? How could that ring, just a simple family heirloom, be worth so much? To her, the only thing that mattered was how much she could get for it to feed her child. But now, hearing William speak of the ring's origin and worth made everything feel distant, unreal. She swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it. But the reality of her situation was still much closer than any talk of ancient jewels. "I don't understand. I just need money. My son," her voice faltered, trembling. "I don't know what else to do. I have nothing left. I just want to make sure he has what he needs." William looked at her with deep compassion. There was something in his eyes that made her feel seen, truly seen for the first time. It wasn't judgment. It was understanding. He knew Amanda's life was about to change, but he also knew she couldn't possibly grasp that yet. He understood there was something at stake far beyond the value of a gem. There was history. There was the past, And most importantly, there was the chance to rewrite Amanda's future. "I understand, Amanda," William said gently. He leaned in slightly, as if sharing a secret. "I don't just want to buy the ring from you. I want to offer something more, something that might change your life and your son's life forever." Amanda furrowed her brow, unsure of what to think. She didn't want more empty promises or pretty words. She wanted action. She wanted Noah to have what he needed. She wanted something real, something that could lift her out of the situation she was in. William continued, "I'd like to offer you much more than you asked for this ring. Not just the $20 you need. I want to give you $50,000. And beyond that, I want to offer you a job here, at my jewelry store, as a partner. Together, we could build something more than just a luxury store. We could create a place that connects with people on a deeper level." Amanda didn't know what to say. $50,000? That alone felt surreal. She looked at William, trying to process it all, trying to understand what he was really offering. A partner in a jewelry store? She had never imagined anything like that could be within her reach. People like her grandmother, never got a real chance to rise beyond survival. But William wasn't just offering money. He was offering transformation, something much greater, a future she had never dared to dream of. "I know you're overwhelmed, and I don't expect you to decide now," William said more firmly. "But I see more in you than just a desperate mother. I see a woman with authenticity, empathy, and strength, qualities some people spend a lifetime chasing. I want to give you the chance to use that in a way that goes beyond what you can imagine. And through that, we can transform the store. But more importantly, transform your lives." Amanda felt some of the tension in her shoulders release, but she still didn't know what to do. The offer felt like an impossible dream, but she also knew this might be her one chance to change everything. She didn't want to let it slip away, and yet she knew that no matter what choice she made, one thing mattered above all else, giving her son a future. But the doubt lingered. Amanda stared intently at William as he still held the ring in his hands. The silence inside the jewelry store felt heavier than usual, filled with the weight of the moment and the whirlwind of thoughts racing through Amanda's mind. William's offer was unexpected, almost surreal, and she could hardly believe what she'd just heard. $50,000? A partnership in a jewelry store? The idea of leaving behind everything she had known and stepping into a completely different world felt like a giant leap, one she had never imagined was possible. "I don't know what to say," Amanda finally managed, her voice soft but full of hesitation. You're offering me so much, but I only need enough to buy formula for my son." She looked down at Noah, who was beginning to shift restlessly in her arms. The immediate needs of her child still anchored her to her daily reality. "I don't know if I can accept all of this. Just a little money for him. That's all I need." William watched her quietly, his gaze calm and steady. He didn't seem fazed by her hesitation, as if he already understood that she was trying to grasp the magnitude of what he was offering. He understood her. Amanda's life had been woven with sacrifice, endless struggle just to survive. And he knew his offer couldn't be accepted without her fully feeling the weight of the decision. "I understand," William said gently but firmly. "You have every right to feel this way. But let me explain something that might help make things clearer." He held the ring up to the soft lighting of the store, letting the emerald catch the glow, making it shine even brighter. He turned it slowly between his fingers, his eyes fixed on the stone, as though it held a story that fascinated him deeply. "This ring," William began, his voice now laced with a seriousness Amanda hadn't noticed before, "isn't just a piece of jewelry. It's a legacy. It belongs to a collection far more valuable than anything else in this store." He looked back at her, meeting her eyes directly. "I recognized the quality and origin of the emerald the moment I saw it. This isn't just gold and gemstones. This ring was crafted for an aristocratic family in Europe, a collection lost to the world during the wars." Amanda frowned slightly, trying to make sense of what William was saying. It all sounded too grand, too unbelievable. She didn't know what he meant by aristocratic family, nor how something so majestic could be tied to something so ordinary in her hands. She didn't know what to believe. The pain of her current reality still loomed large, and this story seemed far removed from her world. "I don't know where you're getting this from," she began, her voice filled with doubt. "My grandmother. She used to say our family had a past, but they were just stories. I never thought any of it was real." William gently placed the ring back on the counter. His expression softened with empathy, and Amanda could tell he wasn't just speaking facts. He genuinely wanted her to understand what he was discovering. "The stories your grandmother told you weren't fantasy, Amanda. She was speaking the truth. You're a descendant of one of the most important families in Europe. Your grandmother, Helen, was one of the last to escape a war that destroyed everything she once knew. This ring belonged to that lineage. It was given to her as a symbol of heritage, a reminder of a life she was forced to leave behind." Amanda was speechless. She had never imagined her grandmother had once been part of something so meaningful, so far removed from the quiet, modest life Amanda had always known. To her, Helen was just an old woman who liked to tell bedtime stories, nothing more. And now William was telling her that those stories, those memories that always felt like make-believe, were part of a significant historical truth. "That can't be true," she murmured. Staring at the ring like it was a puzzle she suddenly didn't understand. "How could something so important end up in my hands without me even knowing?" William took a deep breath and stepped closer, as if trying to help her truly see. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was offering her a truth he knew would be difficult to absorb. What he was giving her wasn't just a business transaction. He was offering her a doorway into a forgotten legacy, a chance to reconnect with something she never knew had been hers. This ring is part of a collection made by a master jeweler in 1923, created exclusively for a noble family known as the Langstons. When the war broke out, they lost everything. Some members of the family managed to carry a few pieces with them as they fled, while others were lost or stolen along the way. William paused, looking at Amanda with seriousness. "Your grandmother, Helen, was the sister of Richard Langston, the last surviving Langston. She escaped the war with only what she could carry. This ring was a symbol of that loss." Amanda struggled to process his words. Richard Langston. She had never heard that name before. All she had known was her grandmother, who had spoken vaguely of a lost past. But she never imagined that the loss had been this profound, this deeply meaningful. She thought of her grandmother's quiet strength, of the humble life they had lived. The idea that she was connected to something so significant, so far from the life she knew, felt impossible. Yet Amanda could sense the truth behind. William's words, something in them rang deeply, unmistakably real. "You're telling me I'm descended from nobility?" Amanda asked, still stunned. "That my grandmother was part of that story?" William nodded, a faint smile appearing, as if he'd been waiting for her to reach that understanding. "Yes, Amanda. You're not just a struggling mother doing her best to survive. You carry a legacy that reaches far beyond that. And this ring, it's part of that. Not only do you have the right to sell it for what it's worth, but you also have the opportunity to reclaim that story, to use it for something greater." Amanda sat in stunned silence, her emotions overwhelming her. She looked at the ring again, trying to grasp the magnitude of what William had revealed. He had unlocked a piece of her family history she never knew existed, a story of a lost family, of a legacy now sitting in her hands without her ever realizing it. She knew then this would change everything. Her life, her identity, her entire understanding of who she was. It was all about to be rewritten. She sat frozen. William's words echoed in her mind like a distant call. She couldn't yet fully answer. She had always seen herself as an ordinary woman, a single mother, trying to survive in a city that didn't have room for her. But now she was learning that her story and her family's story were far more complex than she had ever imagined. Her grandmother, Helen, wasn't just a woman who liked to tell tales. She had been part of something far bigger, something Amanda had never dared to dream of. Sitting in the wooden chair near the counter, Amanda kept her eyes fixed on the ring in William's hands, as though it were the key to a secret her grandmother had always held but never let her unlock. The mystery of the jewel, of the Langston family, and the unexpected connection to that noble lineage left Amanda feeling shaken and intrigued. She had always assumed her grandmother. His stories were just fragments of a time long gone, an old woman, reminiscing about a life that never existed. But now, everything felt different. Reality itself seemed to be shifting in front of her. William noticed her expression, her faraway gaze, her mind clearly trying to catch up with everything she had just heard. He didn't push her to make a decision. He knew this revelation carried the weight of a mountain. Amanda needed time to take it all in. The daily struggles she faced raising Noah, the fear, the hunger. Suddenly they seemed smaller compared to the story unfolding before her. But that didn't mean it would be easy. "Amanda," William said softly, trying to ground her, "I know this is hard to believe, but you're not alone. Your grandmother's story is more than a fading memory. She was the last of a line of people who once lived on grand estates across Europe, with vast lands and a cultural legacy that mattered. This ring is the last piece of what your family lost. Their loss is yours too." Amanda blinked, trying to hold back the tears that welled up in her eyes. She had never imagined her grandmother, the woman who told stories with a wistful smile, had once belonged to a world of castles and legacies. She remembered the sadness behind Helen's smile, the way she spoke about family with both warmth and sorrow, like someone mourning something she could never get back. And now Amanda was beginning to understand that sorrow had been real. "I remember her telling those stories," Amanda murmured, the words tangled in awe and sorrow. "She said our family used to be important, but I never knew what that meant. I always thought she was just trying to make life seem less hard." William leaned in, still holding the ring delicately. "Your grandmother was telling the truth. She was the daughter of a count, a woman who lost everything when war tore Europe apart. She didn't tell you to impress you. She told you because that memory was all she had left. Helen was a survivor, and maybe the reason she never spoke plainly about it was because the loss was just too heavy. She came to America and started over, leaving behind not just a family but an entire identity. Amanda didn't know how to process any of it. She had always seen her grandmother as a pillar of quiet strength, not as a woman who had lived through tragedy and war. But suddenly everything looked different. That simple ring in her hands was no longer just a piece of jewelry. It was a lost key to a legacy she never knew was hers. "So you're saying my grandmother, she was part of that world? She was nobility?" Amanda asked, her voice still laced with disbelief. "Yes," William replied. "Helen Langston was part of Europe's aristocracy. She fled the war with nothing but the memory of a life she could never reclaim. She abandoned her name, her status, everything to survive. And in doing so, she never told the full truth. But now, you have the chance to gather those pieces again." Amanda felt like she'd been pulled out of her own life and placed into a story she didn't recognize. She tried to imagine what her grandmother's life must have been like, how it must have felt to lose everything and start from scratch in a foreign country. She looked down at the ring again, and for the first time, it no longer felt like just an object. It carried the weight of a family's sorrow. And now, somehow, that piece of the past was in her hands, waiting to be rediscovered. Emotions surged through Amanda as she struggled to hold back tears. The grief her grandmother must have carried, the strength it took to build a new life from nothing, it overwhelmed her. Amanda realized that her grandmother's legacy wasn't just about wealth or nobility. It was about resilience, about courage, about surviving when everything was lost. And in that, Amanda saw herself. "What does this mean for me?" Amanda asked, her voice cracking under the weight of the question. "What do I do with all of this?" William looked at her with quiet understanding, as if he knew the answer wouldn't come easily. "What it means is up to you, Amanda. You can choose to use this knowledge to build a life you never thought possible. The ring is only the beginning. The true legacy of your grandmother, the real legacy of the Langstons, isn't in the wealth or the land. It's in what you choose to do with this story. You now have the chance to honor it, to build something bigger, something your son can carry with pride. Amanda felt the full weight of that truth settle on her. The decision she faced wasn't about selling a ring. It wasn't even about money. It was about claiming her story, rebuilding a future from the pieces of a past no one had told her existed. She looked down at Noah in her arms and, for the first time, felt a new sense of purpose. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. She had a legacy to continue, a story to honor, and maybe, just maybe, she could write a new chapter. I don't know what's going to happen. William, Amanda said with a soft sigh, her voice steadier now, filled with something new. But I know I can't let this story die. Not for me, and not for my son. William smiled, with the quiet expression of someone who knew the real journey was just beginning. Amanda sat in silence, reflecting on everything William had just told her. His words echoed in her mind, an offer she had never imagined could be real. $50,000, the chance to become a partner in a luxury jewelry store, and maybe even more powerful than that, the opportunity to rewrite her story. The decision she was about to make felt worlds away from the simple life she knew. But something deep within her, maybe a spark of courage or a hidden hope, told her this was the moment she had been waiting for. A chance not just to change her life, but to transform her son, Noah's future too. As Amanda tried to process the magnitude of the offer, little Noah stirred in her arms, as if sensing something important was unfolding. She looked at him, at his wide, curious eyes, and her breath deepened. She knew that any choice she made now wouldn't affect just her, it would shape his path too. She glanced back at William, who waited patiently, his expression calm, almost as if he was offering something more than a business deal. He was offering a new beginning, a second chance to build something rooted not only in wealth, but in meaning and true transformation. I don't know what to do, Amanda finally said, her voice trembling under the weight of her own confusion. You're offering me so much, more than I can even grasp right now. She swallowed hard, the fear of making the wrong choice creeping in. I've always fought to survive, just to give my son the basics. But now, you're offering me a life that feels so far from anything I ever thought possible. William smiled gently, unhurried. He wasn't here to pressure her. He wasn't trying to rush a decision. What he wanted was for Amanda to feel grounded, to understand that this was her opportunity to rediscover herself, to imagine what she truly wanted for her life and her son's. I understand. Amanda, he said calmly, I know this is a lot, but this isn't just about money. It's not about receiving a large sum and thinking that fixes everything. This is about giving you the chance to create something meaningful. You have a gift for connecting with people, for truly seeing them. And this story, could become your way of transforming not just your life, but your son's as well. Amanda looked down at the ring in William's hand and thought of her grandmother. The ring she had always seen as a simple object now held profound meaning. It wasn't just a family heirloom anymore. It was a symbol of something new. A chance to honor her grandmother, to carry forward a story of resilience and survival, to reconnect with a past she never knew she had. You're saying I have the chance to change my life. And Noah's life? With this job? With this ring? With this story? Amanda asked, her voice brimming with emotion. William nodded, his eyes full of understanding. Yes, you have the chance to rewrite your story, to build something that matters not only to you, but to the people around you. It won't be easy, and I'm not promising perfection. But I can promise you this. You'll have the freedom to create something with purpose. And that, Amanda, is more valuable than any amount of money. His words began to unlock something deep inside her. Amanda had always known her past was defined by struggle, by survival, but she had never truly believed she could change it. She thought she was stuck in her reality, doing her best just to raise her son with dignity. But now, William was offering her more. He was offering her the chance to leave a legacy. I don't know what you expect from me, Amanda said, her voice steadier now. I'm not a businesswoman. I've never trained for anything like this. I don't have the skills you probably think I do, but I love my son, and I love my family. And if there's anything I can do to change our lives for the better, Then I'll try. William listened closely, not interrupting. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy for her, but he was convinced. Amanda had something few others did. She had the ability to connect, to see people in ways most never could. She knew what it meant to fight, to be invisible to the world, and those very qualities, ones she hadn't even seen in herself, were the ones that would help her build something authentic and lasting. I don't expect anything from you except for you to be yourself, he said, his voice sincere and soft. What I see in you, I don't see that often. I see someone with a depth of empathy that can truly change things here. This isn't just about selling jewelry. It's about making a real difference, and you have the power to do that. Amanda felt a wave of emotions rise within her. William's words echoed through her, and yet she was still lost in the enormity of what it would mean to say yes. But she couldn't ignore the possibility anymore. A future where she wasn't just surviving, but building something real, something meaningful, not only for herself, but for everyone around her. She looked at Noah still in her arms and smiled softly. He was the reason she kept going. He was the reason she refused to accept the limited life she'd known. And now, with this offer, she realized she had the chance to create a better world for him. A chance to be more than a survivor. A chance to be someone who left a mark, not just for her child, but for the world. I accept, Amanda said, her voice now full of clarity and resolve. I'll try. I'll do whatever it takes to change our lives. William smiled, his eyes shining with something more than pride, hope. He knew there was more to this moment than a business arrangement. This was the beginning of something new, the start of a transformation. Welcome aboard, Amanda. I'm honored to have you here. And with that, Amanda knew a new chapter was about to begin. As she looked down at Noah for the first time, she felt her life had meaning. She wasn't alone anymore. She was about to create something that could change everything. In the days that followed Amanda's decision, her life took a completely new direction. She began spending more time in the jewelry store, learning from William not just the trade itself, but the heart behind it. He didn't pressure her to pick things up quickly. Instead, he guided her with patience, showing her how to care for each piece, how to tell one stone from another, the historical value of certain jewels, and above all, how to treat people with dignity and empathy. Amanda started to realize her role in the store wasn't just that of a trainee. There was something deeper at play. William's work wasn't just about selling jewelry. It was about stories, about people, about connection. Every item in the store was more than a luxury. It was a symbol of something meaningful, something personal, and customers came looking not just for beauty, but for pieces that held emotional weight. In the early weeks, Amanda struggled. She knew nothing about fine jewelry. Her hands trembled when she tried to clean a display, and the idea of organizing valuable pieces made her anxious. She worried she'd never learn fast enough, never live up to what was expected. But something inside her pushed her to keep going. She could feel that this was more than just a job. It was an opportunity to reshape her life and her son's. William became not just a mentor, but an inspiration. He encouraged her, shared his vision, and challenged her to look deeper. He spoke often about what he called the true value of a jewel. A jewel isn't just something beautiful to look at, he said once, while Amanda carefully arranged the displays. It carries a story, a meaning. People don't buy them just because they're shiny. They buy them because it holds a piece of them. Sometimes it's a memory, a celebration, even a farewell. That's what makes it valuable. Those words stayed with Amanda. She began to understand that in many ways, she was like those jewels. Her life had been marked by hardship and survival, but she carried within her something precious. Maybe it was her unconditional love for her son. Maybe it was her strength. Or maybe it was the legacy of her grandmother, which she was only now beginning to understand. Amanda realized that like those stones in the cases, she had value she had never truly seen in herself. Soon, Amanda began to shine. Her ability to connect with people, to truly listen and understand them, became the heart of the jewelry store. Customers returned not just to buy, but to talk, to share. Amanda had known struggle and loss, and that made her a source of comfort and understanding to others. She created a quiet corner in the store for mothers. Like her, women juggling motherhood and hardship, where they could feel seen. She kept Noah close, in a small cradle beside the display room, where he napped as she worked. But beyond tending to her son, Amanda was building something greater, a space that didn't just sell beauty, but radiated it from within. The store, once a space of silent elegance, was becoming a place of humanity, warmth, and connection. And Amanda could feel it. It was just the beginning. There were hard moments too. Even with her growing confidence, Amanda still questioned if she had what it took. She didn't yet have the technical knowledge to run a store, and the weight of responsibility often felt overwhelming. But William, ever attentive, sat down with her one day and shared something that changed everything. "Amanda," he said, "you're building something no one else could. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. What you're doing here is more than learning about gems. You're changing the way people see business, people, and the power of a story. Trust yourself. You already have everything you need. You just have to believe it." Those words echoed in her heart, and for the first time, Amanda truly believed it. She didn't need to know everything. She didn't need to be flawless. She just had to be herself. And that was enough. As the weeks passed, the store's energy changed. Clients came for the personal touch, the compassion. They left not just with jewelry, but with a sense of being understood. Amanda's story and her ability to hold space for others had become the soul of the business. She also began exploring her family history, searching archives and records to learn more about the Langstons. She discovered her grandmother had arrived in America with a heavy heart, having lost everything but never giving up hope. Amanda felt deeply connected to that story. The pain, the resilience, it was hers too. Each day, she grew closer to that history and closer to her future. She used part of her earnings to start a fund for single mothers, helping women like her find their way back to hope. She knew how hard it was to fight alone, and now that she had been given a second chance, she wanted to make sure others would get one too. William watched all of this unfold with quiet pride. The store had become more than he had ever dreamed. It wasn't just a place of luxury, it was a space of meaning, a community where people mattered and where jewelry was no longer about status, but about connection. Amanda had come to see herself differently. Life was no longer about just surviving, it was about building something lasting. She was no longer just a desperate mother trading a ring for milk. She was someone with vision, with purpose. She had become the heart of something real. She had found her place, not just in the store, but in the world. And most importantly, she had finally found herself. It was a gray and quiet afternoon in New York when he walked in. The door of the jewelry store opened slowly, accompanied by the soft chime of the bell announcing a new customer. Amanda was arranging a new display, an exclusive, vintage collection when she looked toward the entrance. Standing in the doorway was a distinguished and reserved figure. An elderly man, around 80 years old, dressed in a long wool coat perfectly tailored and leaning lightly on a dark wooden cane carved with old, intricate symbols. His steps were slow but steady, his eyes, clear and piercing, scanned the interior of the store with careful attention and an air of anticipation. It was as if he were returning to a place he once knew or searching for something he had lost long ago. Amanda straightened up and stepped forward, sensing instinctively that this customer was unlike any other. There was something about his presence that made the air feel heavier, more meaningful. It wasn't arrogance, it was history. He carried the weight of time with him, and Amanda could feel, without fully understanding why, that he wasn't there just to buy a jewel. "Good afternoon, sir," she said warmly. "Welcome. Is there something I can help you find?" The man looked at her a moment longer than usual, his eyes fixed on her, as if trying to recognize something in her face. Then he spoke with a slight British accent and flawless diction. "Good afternoon, miss. I'm looking for something quite specific. Or perhaps someone." Amanda's brow furrowed slightly, intrigued. "Of course. Please have a seat. May I offer you some tea?" He nodded politely, and Amanda guided him to the quieter corner of the store. where she had placed a small table for private conversations. As she prepared the tea, she observed him discreetly. There was something oddly familiar about him, though she couldn't explain it. She served the tea carefully, and he took the cup with steady hands, though marked by age. "My name is Richard Langston," he said at last. "I'm a retired count, or what's left of the title after the war and the fall of our family. I've spent the last few decades searching for a lost piece of our history, and recently I heard that a very special item resurfaced here. In this store." Amanda felt her heart skip a beat. Langston, the name echoed inside her like thunder. It was the same name William had mentioned weeks ago, her grandmother's lineage. She looked at the man before her, barely able to contain her shock. "You said Langston?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Richard nodded. "Yes. For years, I tried to find my sister, Helen. She vanished during the war. No one heard from her again after she fled with part of our family's collection. A ring with an emerald at the center, unique, designed by our family's trusted jeweler, inspired by sketches my mother made as a young artist. I'd recognize it anywhere." Amanda's hands trembled. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. Helen, the woman who raised her, who had told her tales of a past she never took seriously, was now coming to life, real and undeniable right before her. She felt tears begin to form. She stood slowly, walked quietly to the back of the store, and opened the small box where she had kept the ring. The same one she brought in weeks ago. She picked it up gently, almost reverently, and returned to Richard. With slow, deliberate movements, she placed the ring on the table between them. "Is this it?" she asked, her voice catching. Richard looked at the piece as if he were witnessing a miracle. His hands moved toward it with care, almost in prayer. He touched the ring with his fingertips, and for a brief moment, Amanda saw tears welling in his eyes. "Yes," he whispered. "This is my sister's ring. There's no doubt. She took it with her when she left. She always said that if she had to start over, this would be her last connection to who she had been." Silence fell between them, heavy, moving. It felt as though the ghosts of the past were present, watching them. Amanda took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions rising in her chest. "My grandmother was Helen," she said softly. "Helen Langston. She raised me. She used to talk about a lost time, about a family that lost everything, about a brother she never saw again. But I thought they were just stories, things she made up to feel less alone." Richard looked up at her, surprised, followed by something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. He studied Amanda's face for several seconds, searching for familiar features, and he found them. The eyes, the bone structure, even her tone of voice. It all made sense now. "Then it's true," he said, voice trembling. "Helen survived. She had a life. She had you. I searched for her for so many years, Amanda. So many clues that led to dead ends. And now here you are, my sister's daughter, the last Langston." Amanda didn't know what to say. She had never thought of herself as part of any lineage, much less something this significant. But there she was, sitting before her grandmother's brother, with the pieces of her story finally falling into place. "She passed away 4 years ago," Amanda said quietly. "She never fully spoke about who she was. But now I understand. Maybe she was trying to protect me, or maybe she just didn't want to relive the pain." Richard nodded slowly. Helen was sensitive, strong but quiet. "When the war tore us apart, I was still a young officer, and she was the soul of our home. Artistic, sweet, stubborn. I never accepted that she had died. I always believed she survived, and knowing that she lived and that she had you is more than I ever hoped for." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box, placing it gently on the table. "This belonged to her. A locket. I kept it all these years, hoping that one day I could return it to her or to someone who carried her blood." Amanda opened the box and found an oval-shaped, aged silver locket with a flower engraved on the front. Inside were 2 miniature photos, one of a young Helen, smiling, her hair loose, and the other of a child Amanda had never seen. Perhaps a younger brother, perhaps Richard himself. She sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of emotion rendering her speechless. It was as though a portal had opened, not just to memories, but to entire identities lost to time. Richard wiped his eyes discreetly and looked at Amanda with gratitude. "You're the missing link in our family. And if you'd like, there's a place for you in what's left of the Langstons. Inheritance, properties, investments. But more than that, there's a story that needs to be told. A name that deserves to be honored." Amanda held the locket tightly, feeling her grandmother's presence, as if Helen were holding her hand. For the first time in a long time, Amanda didn't feel alone. She was no longer just the woman who walked into a jewelry store desperate, with a baby in her arms and an old ring. She was a Langston, a bridge between a nearly forgotten past and a future filled with possibility. She looked at Richard, her eyes full of emotion but her posture steady. "Yes," she said. "I want to know that story, and I want to honor my grandmother's name. But I want to do it my way, the way she would have wanted, with love, with purpose, with dignity." And in that moment, they both understood that the story unfolding wasn't just about a rediscovered jewel, but a restored family. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Amanda. Learning that her grandmother, Helen Langston, had been part of a noble European family and that Amanda herself was a direct descendant felt surreal. Though she had grown up hearing stories of a distant past, she now found herself at the center of one far greater than any fairy tale or family myth. The jewelry store, once just a job, began to mean much more. It became the place where she not only found a means to support herself and her son, but also the place where she began uncovering her true heritage. The locket Richard had given her became a symbolic key to understanding her identity. Every time she opened the small box and held it in her hands, Amanda felt something stirring deep within her. The photograph of her young grandmother and the mysterious child, likely. Richard weren't just mementos. They were the threads of a story she was now determined to weave back together. She spent days studying the locket, touching it as if it were a sacred link to a world she never knew. Amanda dove into researching the Langston family, their lost properties, the investments that once sustained them. But in the process, she discovered something far more meaningful. Her grandmother's legacy wasn't just about wealth. It was about courage, about rebuilding, about surviving war and creating a new life from nothing. And that legacy, Amanda realized, was never truly lost. She decided to go deeper. If there was any way to honor her grandmother and the Langston name, it was by keeping their story of survival and resilience alive. What she was building inside the jewelry store wasn't just a business. It was a haven for others like her and her grandmother, who needed a second chance. Late one night, while Noah slept beside her, Amanda took the locket from her pocket and opened it again. This time with reverence and purpose. The night was moonless, and the silence in the store felt sacred, like the voices of those who came before her were present. She knew the weight of the legacy she now carried, and she would no longer run from it. "I am a Langston," she whispered to herself like a promise, "and I will live like it." In the days that followed, Amanda began envisioning how she could use her new position at the jewelry store to create real change. She didn't just want to pass on the Langston name to Noah. She wanted to use it to change lives. She felt a calling to build something bigger, not built on money or status, but on the value of people and shared humanity. Amanda started to reshape the store. It wouldn't just be a place that sold high-end jewelry. She wanted it to be a space where people felt seen, welcomed. She hosted small, intimate events for single mothers, for people going through hardship. She created support groups and safe spaces, something far more meaningful than transactions. Soon, women began seeking her out, not just to buy something, but to connect, to be heard. Amanda knew their pain. She had lived it, and that gave her the strength to be a beacon for others. William noticed the shift, not just in the store, but in Amanda. She was becoming a true leader, not only in business, but in spirit. He saw the jewelry store evolving into something more than he had ever imagined. It wasn't about luxury anymore. It was about transformation, about humanity at the center of everything. "You're doing something really special here." "Amanda," he told her one afternoon, "this isn't just about jewelry. It's about what you're building, the lives you're touching. You have something I didn't see before, a vision, and a strength I deeply admire." Amanda smiled at William, and this time his words didn't just echo, they landed. She knew now what she had to do. She wanted to use the store as a platform to inspire change, to help others find the resilience that she and her grandmother had carried inside them. The store became not just a retail space, but a community hub, a place where beauty symbolized not just status, but strength, healing, and rebirth. She also deepened her research into the Langston legacy, especially after her encounter with Richard. She wanted to know what happened to her family during the war, how they lost everything, and how her grandmother had managed to start over in a foreign land. With every discovery, Amanda felt closer to her grandmother and more committed to preserving her legacy. But the weight of that inheritance didn't just bring pride, it brought responsibility. Amanda felt the duty to honor Helen's memory and ensure that the next generation, Noah, understood the power and dignity of their lineage. She vowed to carry their story forward, to make it matter through her actions and the legacy she would now build. And it was in this season of reflection and transformation that Amanda finally felt truly connected to who she was. No longer just a woman struggling to survive in an indifferent city, she was someone who carried a powerful story. A story full of loss, resilience, and now hope. And she knew without a doubt that this story, her story, was the key to changing not only her own life, but the lives of those around her. The Hearth Hotel had become more than a project. It was a living, breathing space. A place where warmth wasn't just part of the decor, but part of the people. Reviews poured in from guests, who didn't just talk about thread, counts, or skyline views, but about how the place made them feel. A kind of quiet humanity, a sense of being cared for, even in a city that usually rushed past without noticing. Alexander had never built anything like it, and he knew it. But success, even when rooted in empathy, attracts attention, and not all of it was welcome. In late March, he received a call from a Harris Holdings board member. "We need to talk," the voice said, short and cold. "You've built something that's getting attention. That's fine, but your name is still attached to us, and our investors are asking questions." Alexander leaned back in his chair. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that involve spreadsheets, cost analysis, profit margins. You're running that place like a non-profit. 6 partners have reached out this week asking why your staff-to-room ratio is nearly double the industry standard." "It works," Alexander replied. "People stay longer. They come back. They talk about it. That's not the point. It's not scalable. Your staff has health care, flexible hours, paid overtime, emergency childcare. That's not hospitality, Alexander. That's charity." There was a pause. Alexander's voice was steady. "It's humanity." But the conversation didn't end there. The board was preparing a formal meeting to evaluate his stake, his use of resources, and whether his new direction aligned with Harris Holdings' values. In short, he had built something too kind for the luxury world. He ended the call and stared out the office window, fists resting against his lips. The view hadn't changed. The same skyline, the same birds circling a gray sky. But something inside him had. They didn't understand. They couldn't. That evening, he found Caroline in the kitchen, helping Lucy and Abby bake cookies shaped like hotel keys. Abby was covered in flour. Lucy was trying to write names with icing. Caroline looked up and saw it on his face immediately. "What happened?" Alexander didn't answer at first. He sat on a stool and watched the girls. "I'm going to be asked to make a decision," he said softly, "between them. And this." Caroline waited. Then he looked at her. "They want me to scale back, cut staff, increase automation, remove the human-centered systems we built. They say it's not sustainable." She dried her hands and sat beside him. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I built something honest for the first time in my life, and now they want me to take it apart." She placed her hand over his. "And if you don't, they'll try to take it, or make it impossible to grow." There was silence. Then Caroline said, "You gave this place your name, your values, your heart. Maybe the problem isn't that it doesn't fit their mold. Maybe the mold is the problem." He looked at her. Really looked. And in her quiet steadiness he found clarity. That night, Alexander sat at his desk and wrote a letter. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was clear, precise, effective immediately. "I withdraw my name, influence, and future stake from all decision-making at Harris Holdings. I decline further funding, guidance, or association. I will not build something with people who ask me to sacrifice the dignity of those who make it possible." The next morning, he handed the letter to Julia, his longtime assistant. She read it twice. "You're really doing this?" He nodded. She smiled. "Took you long enough." He let out a breath of laughter. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" She folded the letter carefully. "You're finally doing your thing." The news spread quickly. Investors were stunned. The media ran quiet stories about a CEO walking away from an empire. But inside the Hearth Hotel, there was no panic. Only pride. The staff understood. Alexander hadn't just defended a building, he had defended them. And Caroline, she didn't say much. But that night, after the girls had fallen asleep and the world went quiet, she placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "You chose us." He turned, eyes tired but shining. "I choose you again, every time." She stepped closer. "I know." That weekend, the staff organized something small. A dinner in the garden terrace behind the hotel. String lights hung between trees, white cloths over folding tables, dishes from every background. No speeches, just laughter, music, and the kind of joy that comes when people know they matter. Alexander stood beside Caroline with a paper plate in hand, surrounded by people who had once been names on resumes. Now they were something else. His reason. Lucy ran up holding 2 cookies. "I made one shaped like a heart." She beamed. He crouched down, smiling. "It's perfect." Abby tugged on his coat. "Are you sad you left your old job?" He paused, then looked around. At the lights, the people, the woman beside him, and said, "No, I think I finally found the real one." Later that night, with the garden quiet and the air cooling, Caroline stood beneath the lights, her fingers laced in his. "I don't think we were supposed to meet that day," she whispered. "I think we were supposed to change each other." He turned to her. "We still are." Above them, the lights swayed in the breeze, gentle reminders that in a world built for profit, there is still room for kindness. And sometimes choosing people over power doesn't just change a company, it changes a life. The official split from Harris Holdings wasn't just a statement. It was a seismic shift. In an industry where image was everything, Alexander Harris, stepping away from his empire to launch something smaller, more human, sent ripples through boardrooms and business sections across the country. But to Alexander, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like breathing for the first time. He spent the next several weeks not writing memos or attending luxury conferences, but sitting at kitchen tables, walking hotel hallways and talking to real people. Staff, guests, community leaders, listening, asking what hospitality meant to them, what they needed. The goal wasn't growth anymore. The goal was connection. And out of that came a new vision. Not just an expansion of Hearth Hotels, something deeper, a movement. Caroline was there from the very beginning, not as a figurehead, not behind the scenes, but at the center. She wasn't just a manager anymore. She was a co-founder, a partner. Her name was on every document, every blueprint, every contract. And this time, it wasn't because Alexander gave it to her. It was because she had earned it through every step, every sleepless night, every act of quiet leadership, every room she had once cleaned with her own hands. The new company would be called Hearth and Haven, not just hotels, experiences, boutique properties in underserved communities that would offer more than rooms and minibars. They would host job training programs, childcare centers, community kitchens, art spaces, food drives, hotels that didn't just shelter people, but uplifted them. They began with one property, an old, decaying inn on the outskirts of a post-industrial town that had lost its economic engine years ago. The building was falling apart. The windows were boarded, the roof leaked, but the foundation was solid. And so were their intentions. "We'll rebuild it," Alexander said, standing beside her in the cold, both in hard hats, wind blowing around them. Caroline looked up at the broken facade, vines curling through the brickwork. "You really think people will come?" He turned to her, calm and steady. "They won't come for what it is. They'll come for what it stands for." She smiled. They rolled up their sleeves, literally. Caroline picked the color schemes with the help of Abby's doodles. Lucy helped name the rooms: Sunlight Suite, Hope Room, the Kindness Loft. Alexander handled zoning and permits. Caroline personally interviewed every hire. Most were single mothers, veterans, young people who had dropped out of school, people who had been overlooked. And every one of them looked at Caroline and saw something that made them believe they could try again. The first night they stayed at the nearly finished inn, the walls still smelled faintly of fresh paint. The beds were made, the carpets new, but there were no photos, no press, no guests, just Caroline, Alexander, the girls, and a pizza box on the floor of the lobby. They sat cross-legged, eating, laughing. Abby did an impression of a grumpy guest. Lucy read the safety manual like it was a dramatic poem. Caroline told stories about her first job cleaning a hotel, not unlike this one. It didn't have windows that opened, she said. The walls were beige. The air was stale. No one ever said good morning. Alexander looked around at the open windows. The soft colors, the plants in the corner. This one's already different. The grand opening was small on purpose. No ribbon cutting, no press kits, just the people from the town. Families brought casseroles and folding chairs. Kids ran around the parking lot. The mayor gave a short speech about second chances. A housekeeper read a poem she'd written about rebuilding. A former guest from the original. Hearth Hotel flew in just to say, "I stayed at a place that made me feel human again. And I want that everywhere." Alexander and Caroline stood at the edge of the garden, hand in hand. "This doesn't feel like a company," she said. "It feels like a family tree," he smiled. "Exactly what it's supposed to be." They hadn't just launched a new brand. They had rewritten the blueprint for what hospitality could look like. And soon other cities started calling, people who had heard whispers about what they were doing. Letters started arriving, some typed, some handwritten, from hotel workers, social workers, students studying hospitality. "I want to build something like yours someday." And Alexander, once known for his empire of luxury, now found his greatest pride in small moments. A child hugging the front desk clerk, a dishwasher becoming a supervisor, a mother finding work and shelter under the same roof for the first time in months. And always Caroline by his side, not as a symbol, but as the soul of everything they had created. One afternoon, as they walked the perimeter of their second site under renovation, Alexander turned to her. "Did you ever imagine your life would look like this?" She didn't answer right away. She looked around at the scaffolding, the new garden plan, the golden sunlight falling against the back wall of what would soon be bedrooms. Laughter, safety, then softly, "No, I used to dream of stability, but this is legacy." He stopped walking. "And how does it feel to be the one shaping it?" She turned to face him. "Terrifying. And beautiful," he nodded. "I feel the same." And then, without ceremony or script, he said, "Let's build a life like this too. Not just hotels, a home, for real." Caroline looked at him, really looked. Not the CEO, not the rescuer, just the man. And she knew, deep in her chest, that this wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of one that would be remembered. Not because of headlines, not because of money, but because two people had dared to build something soft in a world that had grown so hard. Something whole, together. Time passed quickly, and the Helen Langston Foundation grew from a vague idea into a solid reality, touching the lives of hundreds of women. Amanda felt that her journey was far from over. Her life had been transformed in ways she never imagined, but with that came unexpected challenges and difficult choices. The impact of her mission and the foundation's growth brought up questions she had never considered, testing her vision of a future built on empathy and service. As the foundation expanded, Amanda found herself taking on more and more responsibility. She now managed a team of professionals, was constantly approached by people seeking guidance and support. and her presence in the community had become essential. Yet with growth came logistical, financial and emotional challenges. Although she was deeply committed to her mission, she also began to realize that balancing her work, her personal life, and her responsibilities as a mother was becoming increasingly difficult. Noah, now 5 years old, was beginning to notice the changes in their lives. He had grown up surrounded by Amanda's dedication, but he also felt the absence of those moments when she could give him her full attention. What had once felt like a natural extension of Amanda's love and care was now consuming most of her time and emotional energy. She wanted to be the present, nurturing mother she had always dreamed of being, but the demands of her new life were constantly putting that to the test. Amanda found herself torn between her son, her mission, and the expectations of others. The foundation needed her more than ever. New projects, partnerships, events, but so did Noah. He had begun asking where she spent so much time and why she couldn't come to his school events or play at home. Amanda started to wonder whether she was making the right choices and whether she was truly balancing her priorities fairly. One especially difficult night, after a long fundraising event, Amanda came home exhausted. She had stayed late organizing donations and speaking with business partners. When she walked in, she found Noah sitting in the living room, looking more serious than usual. In his hands was a drawing from school, a picture of his mom working at the jewelry store, surrounded by other people. But in the corner of the drawing was something sad. Amanda wasn't standing next to him. Noah looked at her with a mix of confusion and sadness. "Mom," he said softly, "you work too much. I miss you." His words hit Amanda like a knife to the heart. She had tried to juggle everything, but her priorities had blurred in ways she hadn't anticipated. She knelt down, pulled Noah into her arms and held him tight. The realization that he felt her absence was overwhelming. She knew he needed her just as much as the foundation and the women she helped did. But in that moment, she didn't know how to bridge the gap. "Mommy's here, sweetheart," Amanda whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry I haven't been with you as much. I promise I'll do better. I want to be here with you. Just us." That night was quiet. Amanda lay in bed, Noah fast asleep beside her, and stared at her grandmother's locket. She thought about everything Helen had gone through, and what she herself was facing now. Helen Langston had rebuilt her life, but at what cost? Amanda didn't want to sacrifice her family for her mission. She had done enough to become a leader, but now she needed to reclaim the balance between the woman her foundation needed and the mother her son deserved. The next day, Amanda made a decision. She knew it was time to reevaluate the path she was on and realign her priorities. She began restructuring the foundation, delegating more responsibilities to her team. She understood she couldn't do everything alone. She had a bigger vision, but it also needed to be sustainable. And most importantly, she needed time for Noah to be the mother he deserved. Amanda made a conscious effort to include more moments with Noah in her daily life. She empowered key team members to take on leadership roles and began stepping back from being constantly involved. And somehow that lightened the burden. There was still a lot of work to do, but Amanda finally found a rhythm that felt healthier for both her and her son. Her love for Noah grew stronger every day. She knew that by creating better balance, she was showing him what it meant to be strong, but also loving. What it meant to care for yourself and your family while still making a difference in the world. Amanda also felt a deeper connection to her grandmother's mission. Helen had not only rebuilt her life out of necessity, but had done it with the courage to fight for purpose. Amanda knew she was walking that same path, with the wisdom to know when to shift direction. The foundation, now supported by more resources and a capable team, continued to uplift thousands of women. Amanda remained a leader, but now she was also a present mother, a woman who understood that to truly serve others, she had to care for herself and her family too. She understood that the story she was writing, her own, her grandmother's, and the stories of the women she helped, wasn't just about outward accomplishments. It was about love, resilience, and rising again every time life tried to knock you down. She looked at Noah, now smiling more often, more confident, and she smiled back. She was building a new story for him, one where love and family came first. He was the reason she never gave up, the reason she knew she could change lives. Not just his, but the lives of so many others who were finally learning to believe in the power of transformation. Amanda smiled to herself and whispered softly, "I can be a mother and a leader. I can be all of it." Time, as always, continued to move forward, but Amanda felt that her life had finally found a more balanced rhythm. She had learned to navigate her foundation, the jewelry store, and her life with Noah. The challenges never truly disappeared, but she had grown stronger, more centered, and yet one question still lingered: what was the deeper meaning of her mission? As the foundation grew, Amanda reflected more on why she was so determined to help women and what she truly wanted her grandmother's legacy to mean for the future. She now understood the depth of loss Helen had faced, not just the material loss of wealth during the war, but the loss of identity and security. Still, Helen had rebuilt her life. She hadn't let what was taken from her define her, but rather what she chose to create. Amanda began to ask herself if she was truly honoring that legacy in the most meaningful way. She had built a strong foundation, transformed the jewelry store into a support center, but she still felt something was missing, something beyond the financial or practical, something symbolic, and it was on a quiet, rainy autumn morning that the answer came, not as a grand revelation, but as a subtle moment of clarity. She was sitting at her desk, Noah in her lap, when she glanced at a simple piece of jewelry in the store's display. It was a modest ring, with a small diamond and a classic design. Nothing like the elaborate pieces that usually drew attention, but something about its simplicity struck her deeply. It felt like a metaphor for everything she was trying to build. This unassuming ring, with its gentle shine, reflected the true essence of her mission. She wasn't just creating something beautiful, she was creating something meaningful, something that touched lives and changed futures. She looked at Noah and smiled, full of love. "You know, you're already the greatest gem in my life," she whispered, stroking his hair. "You, my love, are the most precious gift I've ever been given." As the words left her lips, Amanda realized something profound. Noah, pure, innocent, represented the value of all the things money couldn't buy. He was the heart of her life, the reason behind everything she did. And like the simple ring, he had the quiet power to brighten and transform everything he touched, without needing to be flashy. That was when Amanda understood the true value of a jewel. It wasn't in the shine or the price tag. It wasn't in how many people admired it or what it could be sold for. A jewel's true value was in its story, in how it touched hearts, and in the legacy it left behind. The same was true for her life, and for the legacy she was now building. It was Helen Langston's story, Amanda's choices, and the lives of the women she helped that gave everything meaning. Looking at that ring, Amanda saw that true wealth was found in the smallest things, in how she touched someone's life, in how she helped a woman rediscover her voice, her identity, and her strength. The foundation wasn't just about financial support. It was about building something lasting, a network of compassion where people were seen as whole human beings with stories of their own. Amanda decided her next mission was to expand that vision. She wanted to create a program inside the foundation that offered more than material aid, something that nurtured emotional and spiritual strength. Real empowerment, she knew, came from within, and she wanted to create a space where women could reconnect with their own power, rediscover their worth, and rebuild a life on their own terms. She began working with therapists, psychologists, and mentors to develop a training program focused not only on practical skills but on self-esteem, resilience, and inner healing. She wanted women to look in the mirror and see not just their scars, but their victories. The program took shape quickly. Soon, women from all over the city began signing up. It was the embodiment of everything Amanda had learned, because to truly help someone rise, you have to offer more than money. You have to give them part of yourself, something real and untouchable. The first graduating class of the program was a resounding success. The women who completed it didn't just gain skills, they found confidence. They held their heads high. They had a plan. Amanda watched their transformation with tears in her eyes. Women who had once walked in with no hope now stood tall, with purpose. Noah, often by her side at foundation events, began to understand innocently, yet clearly, what his mother was doing. He saw the smiles of women who received support. He started donating toys, making cards for the mothers who came to the center. He began to grasp that a person's value wasn't in what they had, but in what they could give. Amanda also noticed her own perspective shifting. Though she still worked hard to keep the foundation and the store running, she now embraced the quiet moments with Noah. They went on more outings, shared more dinners, took more walks together. She learned that by slowing down and treasuring what really mattered, she wasn't just creating a more balanced life. She was teaching Noah what it meant to live with love and intention. The jewelry store, once a symbol of wealth and status, was now a symbol of empathy and change. The shine of the gems was no longer the center of attention. What mattered most was the impact they had on the lives of those who walked through the door. Every ring, every necklace, every piece now represented a second chance. Amanda knew the real value wasn't in the gold or the stones. It was in the stories. She looked at her grandmother's locket, now displayed beside her desk, and smiled. Helen Langston had lost everything, but what she left behind was more precious than any treasure. Amanda knew the true worth of a jewel, of a story, of a life wasn't in the riches we hold, but in the love we give, in the courage to rise again, and in the power to inspire others to do the same. With her grandmother's legacy and her love for Noah guiding every step, Amanda knew that the legacy she was building was the real treasure. Not something measured in dollars, but in hearts touched, lives changed, and the love that fueled it all. Sometimes, life's greatest challenges lead us to our truest purpose. And when everything seems lost, it's in the rebuilding that we discover our deepest strength. This journey of pain, transformation, and resilience is a reminder that each of us has the power to rewrite our story. By following this journey, you didn't just witness the strength of the human spirit. You saw how destiny can be rewritten, one choice at a time. Never underestimate the power of a new beginning, because the truest jewel in life is the one we become when we choose to love, grow, and build something greater than ourselves. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, leave a like, and tell us in the comments what inspired you most on this journey. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that change lives.